Welcome to part 10 of this demonstration of a YUI-based Ajax application being developed using EWD. In the previous section we looked at how to query the MDB database, and now we're going to use that to apply to the EWD fragments. And the fragment we're going to look at is the one that defines this form here asking for the artist, and that was this form here. Here's the submit button, and the first thing we're going to do is add the two additional attributes, next page and target ID, that define the fragment to be fetched when we press this submit button, cdartistsresults.ewd, and the target ID where that will be put, which is this guy here. Now that doesn't exist, so we're going to add it actually to the bottom of this form so that the results will appear at the bottom once we submit the form. So we'll just leave a gap with that, and then we'll say div id equals, and there's our div. So that should be it for that fragment. Now we're going to create this fragment that will run the query and present the results in a YUI DataTable. So let's now go to our WinSCP window and add a new file, which is our cd by artist results.ewd fragment. And so what are we going to put in it? Well, let me just paste in this first, and then I'll explain later what this does. So it's a fragment that contains a new YUI widget we've not looked at before, YUI DataTable, and it has a set of column definitions, YUI DataTable column, which go inside, nested inside the YUI DataTable tag. The outer one, the data table, defines the actual data table itself. So we define its caption at the top, and critically we define a data store, which is an EWD session data structure which will feed the data into it. And we've not defined that yet, we'll do that in a minute. The other thing about this is that we're going to page the results, 15 results at a time, and the paging will be done in the browser itself. Notice that each data table column has a key: album, name, composer, and so on. What do those refer to? Well, those, if we look at this over here, this is an extract from the Python dictionary which returned the results from MDB. And you'll see in this particular record or item, each of the attributes has a name: album, disc number, last played, composer, and so on. And those are what map into the key names. So these are the same names, same case structure and spaces and so on. So these map into the attribute names, and then we define the column headings. It'll go in the data table column headings, and then we define whether each column is sortable and resizable. In this case they're all true. So that's our basic fragment. The one thing we haven't done is define how this data store is going to get created, and that's done using a pre-page script in here. And the name we're going to use for that is, it's a Python script. It's in our module library.py. If you remember, we used that before, and we're going to have a function called get CDs by artist. That's our fragment done. Now let's create this function here, get CDs by artist. So we'll go into our library.py module that we'd looked at before. This is what it contains so far. And now we're going to add, I'm going to paste in this pre-built function into it, and then explain what this does. So this is our pre-page script reference, get CDs by artist. It has the standard single parameter sesID, which is fed at runtime by EWD. Then we're going to get the value of the artist that they typed into the form, and that's a session value of CD artist. Where did that come from? Well, if we look at our form, then where it asked for artist, the field name was CD artist, and that corresponds with this over here, CD artist. And then we're checking if that artist was null, it means they didn't type anything in, so we're going to return an error, and that should create an alert. Otherwise, we're going to use the MDB, the Boto connection. We're going to run the query. We're going to build the query using the artist name that they've typed in, and run that query against MDB. The next thing we're going to do here is an interesting little addition. If you remember, the results that came back from MDB were in Unicode format, and we need to convert them into ASCII format. And I've got a pre-written little function called convertDict, which will do that. Let's go and get that. That's this guy here. And it's very simple. It just runs through all the items in the dictionary and applies this standard Python function, which takes the Unicode values and turns them into ASCII and replaces any non-ASCII characters into an XML viewable equivalent. So we apply that, and then we check to see how many items were in the dictionary. If there were none, it meant there were no matches, so we'll return an alert. It says no matches were found. Otherwise, it's all worked correctly, and we then apply this standard EWD pre-built API, which comes with the EWD, which will map that data dictionary that we've now converted to ASCII format into our EWD session structure, CD by artist results. There's one more thing we need to do in here, and that's because we're using the Boto library. We need to import the Boto module into this module. That should be it for that. Let's just cross-refer one thing here. So we're creating the data table store CD artist results, and that maps to our data store in here, CD by artist results. Okay, so that's our new fragment saved, our new library version saved. Now we just need to go over here and recompile our library application, recompile those new fragments. Now let's try it out. Bring it up in the browser. We'll start this from the top. Our login form. Go in here, library, brand X, query, and there we are. There's our results. It's sortable, paged, and if we don't put any artist in, we should get an error. You must specify an artist, and if we put in one that doesn't exist, we should also get an error. No matches found. There we are. That's our application, pretty much completely written. Part 11 will just look at a few additional details that we haven't looked at yet in this application. But there we are, a complete Ajax YUI application written in just a little over an hour. Not bad. See you in part 11.